Hello, unicorns. I am jumping in to answer a question for Pattie. I'm going to read the question out. I think she posted it yesterday, and her question is, knowing about law of attraction leads to many questions, and especially when contrast happens. Does contrast only happen when one is very low on the emotional scale? Or one can be good at feeling place and contrast shows up, or one can be at a good feeling place and contrast shows up. Pattie, love you so much. Thank you for this beautiful question. I don't know if you've ever heard Abraham talk about this, but contrast is never going to go away regardless of where you are on the emotional scale. There's still going to be contrast when you're high on the emotional scale, and there is going to be contrast when you're low on the emotional scale. There is a difference, however, because contrast does not necessarily have to be negative. Contrast just means that you want things to be different than what they are. So, for example, I have this calculator and I want a bigger calculator or a more powerful calculator. That's contrast. I am giving birth to a new desire, but it's not painful. And so what you're really asking is, does contrast always have to be painful? And the answer is no. No. There is very happy contrast. When you go to buy a Lexus and you have or a Porsche and you have a yellow color choices between yellow and red, that's contrast. But it's not unpleasant. So don't get this into your head that contrast is only negative or feels bad, because that's not at all what it is. Contrast is at all levels of the emotional scale. You can have contrast anywhere along the emotional scale, but contrast in the lower half of the emotional scale feels bad. But contrast on the top half of the emotional scale feels good. It's like when you go into a buffet and there are all of these amazing, beautiful foods laid out in front of you. That's contrast. Which one should I try first? That's contrast. But it's happy, beautiful contrast. There's no unhappiness about it. And that is because of where you are on the emotional scale, because you can go into the same buffet. You can go into the same buffet from a low place on the emotional scale, and the contrast will not appear to be a happy contrast to you. You'll be like, how horrible it is that there are all these things spread out in front of me. Because you view contrast through your eyes, your filter, and you can decide to adopt any kind of attitude towards the contrast that is happening, right? But the gap, there's no gap here. There's no gap here, and there's no gap here because it's your attitude is different, and so what the universe is bringing you is different, because it is vibrational matching. So when you're over here, the kind of contrast that you're going to be matched up with is not going to be the same as when you're over here. It just makes sense, doesn't it? Right? This is going to be different because you're attracting a different set of outcomes to yourself. So people who I'm reminded of a story that I heard Ken Honda talk about, and he was interviewing extremely wealthy people, and he said that he interviewed this one person who was a very successful businessman, and he asked this businessman, he said, so now you've come such a long way, you've grown your business so much, you must feel that you are very successful. And the man said, no, I'm not successful because I've done well in business, but I still don't own a private jet. So you see, now where is he looking at that contrast from? right? It's all about the emotional scale. When you understand the emotional scale, you can put everything on the emotional scale. Emotional scale and momentum. You just need to understand these two concepts, and then everything else fits in. All right? All right. So I hope that answers your amazing question. Contrast shows up. The bottom line is, living of life is about experiencing contrast, because without contrast you would not have desire, and if you did not have desire, there would be no need for you to be on planet Earth. Then you would become non-physical, because in non-physical, where Abraham lives, where your inner being lives, there is no contrast. That is why your inner being never struggles, your inner being never feels bad, your inner being never pushes back, your inner being never has an opinion about what you want. You want because contrast makes you want, and then your inner being just simply says yes. Your inner being simply says, absolutely, let's go for it. So contrast is the essence of life. Life on planet Earth prevails because of contrast. Contrast will never go away. It is part of life. However, there are two things about it. The first one is, where are you on the emotional scale? Because the things that come into your life depend on where you are. And number two, how do you perceive it? Because someone who is high on the emotional scale can make a different perception about something and therefore go down the emotional scale. And someone who is low on the emotional scale can view some contrast and shift their perspective and therefore go up the emotional scale. And so in the end, the only thing that really matters is your perception, and you absolutely control that. All right. Thanks again, Pattie, for your question. Love you lots, and see you later. Bye for now.